Welcome to silent screams, where darkness, whispers, and terror await you. Are you ready to confront your fears? Story 1: The Cursed Strings of Isabelle. On a chilly autumn evening, the faint echo of a gavel reverberated through the dimly lit auction house. Among the eclectic assortment of antiques, a peculiar item stood out, a porcelain doll with unnerving glass eyes, dressed in a faded lace gown. Its presence commanded the room, drawing whispers from the crowd. Lot 37, the auctioneer announced, his voice strained. Isabelle, a handcrafted doll from the late 19th century. Starting bid at $50. Despite the doll's eerie aura, hands shot up. By the end of the heated bidding war, the doll found a new owner, Margaret Holloway, a middle-aged collector of Victorian memorabilia. Unbeknownst to Margaret, Isabelle's haunting tale was far from over. It was about to begin anew. Margaret placed Isabelle on a wooden shelf in her study, the doll perfectly complementing her collection of antique clocks and ornate trinkets. Yet, from the moment Isabelle arrived, strange occurrences unfolded. At first, they were minor, a clock stopping at 3:13 a.m., a shadow flitting across the corner of her eye. But as days passed, the phenomena escalated. Books toppled from shelves without warning. Margaret swore she heard faint giggles echoing through the house at night. Her neighbor, a spry woman named Claire, visited one evening for tea. When Claire's gaze fell on Isabelle, she recoiled. "Where did you get that thing?" she asked, her voice trembling. Margaret laughed nervously. "At the auction." "Why?" Claire hesitated, then whispered, "I've heard stories about dolls like that. They aren't just objects, they're vessels." Margaret dismissed Claire's warning, chalking up the disturbances to her overactive imagination. But her doubts resurfaced one evening when she discovered Isabelle sitting on her desk. Though she distinctly remembered placing the doll on the shelf, tucked beneath Isabelle's tiny porcelain hand was a string of paper, folded, brittle, and covered in scrawled handwriting. It read, "Do not leave her alone. Do not let her leave." Margaret's heart raced. She locked Isabelle in a display case, securing the latch tightly. That night, she woke to a piercing sound, a violin playing a mournful tune. She followed the sound to the study. The display case door hung ajar, its latch shattered. Isabelle sat on the desk once more, a miniature violin in her hands, desperate for answers. Margaret dug into Isabelle's history. Her search led her to an old newspaper archive where she uncovered the tragic story of a 19th-century dollmaker named Evelyn Cartwright. Evelyn had been renowned for her lifelike dolls, but her fame ended abruptly when her daughter, Isabelle, disappeared. Consumed by grief, Evelyn created a doll in her daughter's likeness, pouring her sorrow and obsession into the craft. Rumors swirled that Evelyn used forbidden rituals to bind her daughter's spirit to the doll. Days later, Evelyn was found dead in her workshop, her face frozen in terror. Margaret sought the help of a local historian, Arthur Blake, who specialized in occult artifacts. When Arthur saw Isabelle, his face paled. "You need to destroy it," he urged. "The doll's spirit is restless. It feeds on fear and grows stronger with each passing day." Margaret hesitated. "How do I do it?" Arthur instructed her to perform a ritual at dawn, involving salt circles and fire. But as the ritual commenced, Isabelle fought back. Objects flew across the room. Books burst into flames, and Isabelle's porcelain face twisted into a grotesque snarl. A voice echoed, you cannot take me away. She needs me. Margaret managed to subdue Isabelle temporarily, binding the doll in chains. But before she could finish the ritual, she heard the unmistakable sound of a child's laughter. A cold hand gripped her shoulder. Turning slowly, Margaret came face to face with a translucent figure, a young girl with hollow eyes. "Don't hurt her," the girl whispered. "She's all I have." For a moment, Margaret hesitated, torn between fear and pity. But then she remembered Claire's words, "They aren't just objects, they're vessels." Summoning her courage, Margaret completed the ritual. Isabelle let out a deafening wail as the chains glowed red-hot and the doll crumbled into ash. The disturbances ceased, and Margaret's home returned to its serene state. But the ordeal left scars. She avoided the study and its empty shelves, haunted by memories of Isabelle. Weeks later, Margaret received an unmarked package. Inside was a familiar violin, its strings eerily pristine. Attached was a note. "You took her from me. Now I'll take you." As Margaret read the note, the faint sound of a violin playing filled the room once more. Story 2, The Curse of Annabelle's Keeper. It began with an innocent gift. Claire, an antique enthusiast and collector, had stumbled upon a small, dusty shop tucked away in the cobblestone alleys of Salem. Inside, among the cracked porcelain and tarnished silver, sat a doll unlike any she had ever seen. Its pale porcelain face was delicately painted, with piercing blue eyes that seemed too lifelike, framed by golden curls of thread-like hair. The doll wore a Victorian dress, faded but still elegant, embroidered with roses and lace. The shopkeeper, a frail old man with a trembling voice, hesitated when Claire asked about the doll. "Annabelle," he murmured, almost inaudibly. "She is not ordinary. Please, take something else. This doll carries a darkness." Claire, intrigued rather than deterred, insisted on buying it. She didn't believe in curses or supernatural nonsense. The doll was perfect for her collection, a centerpiece that would catch everyone's attention. The shopkeeper reluctantly handed it over, muttering one final warning: "Whatever you do, do not anger her." Claire placed Annabelle on a shelf in her living room, surrounded by other antiques. That night, as the house settled into silence, Claire was jolted awake by a faint noise. It sounded like a whisper, soft and melodic, but unsettlingly close. She dismissed it as her imagination and went back to sleep. But the next night, the whispers returned, louder this time, accompanied by the sound of tiny footsteps. "Is someone there?" Claire called out, her voice trembling. The house remained silent. But when she turned to look at the shelf, Annabelle had moved. Her head, which had been tilted slightly downward, now faced forward, the blue eyes staring directly at Claire's bed. The next morning, Claire chalked up the movement to vibrations or an accidental nudge. Determined to prove her rationality, she locked Annabelle in a glass cabinet. That night, the whispers returned, more insistent than ever. Claire could hear them distinctly now: "Let me out. Let me out." Frightened but determined, she walked to the cabinet, only to find the glass door wide open. Annabelle was sitting outside, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, a sinister smile seemingly painted across her porcelain face. Claire's heart pounded as she backed away. She placed the doll in a wooden box and locked it, then shoved it into the attic. But Annabelle wasn't done. The following days were a descent into madness. Claire began to hear footsteps during the day. Soft and deliberate. As though someone were pacing just outside her vision. Objects around the house would move or fall without explanation. One morning, she found "Let me out" scrawled on her bathroom mirror in what looked like ash. Terrified, Claire decided to research the doll. The shopkeeper's warnings echoed in her mind. So she returned to the store. But when she arrived, she found only an abandoned building. There was no sign of the shop, nor the old man. Desperate, she turned to the internet, diving into forums and articles about haunted objects. It wasn't long before she stumbled upon an old urban legend about a doll named Annabelle, a vessel for a vengeful spirit, bound to destroy anyone who disrespected her. One stormy night, Claire awoke to the sound of her bedroom door creaking open. Standing in the doorway was Annabelle. Her dress pristine despite the dirt of the attic. The doll's eyes glowed faintly. And a low, guttural laugh filled the room. Claire screamed, grabbing the nearest object, a heavy lamp, and throwing it at the doll. The lamp shattered. But Annabelle remained unharmed. The whispers turned into deafening shrieks as the room's temperature plummeted. A shadowy figure began to materialize behind Annabelle. Its form twisted and unnatural. Claire, shaking with terror, begged for mercy. "Please. What do you want?" The shadow's voice was cold and sharp. "You took me from my rest. Now you must pay." In a desperate attempt to rid herself of the curse, Claire sought the help of a medium. The medium, a woman named Evelyn, performed a séance to communicate with the spirit bound to the doll. Evelyn's voice trembled as she spoke. "This is not a child's spirit. It is something ancient. Something evil." The séance spiraled out of control as Annabelle began to move on her own. Her porcelain cracking to reveal a grotesque, rotting face beneath. Evelyn screamed as the candles in the room extinguished simultaneously. When the lights flickered back on, Evelyn was gone. Only her chair remained, toppled over. Claire's house was found abandoned weeks later. Neighbors reported seeing lights flicker at odd hours and hearing faint laughter. Annabelle was never recovered. But the legend persisted. Some say the doll still wanders, searching for its next keeper, waiting to whisper, "Let me out." Story 3: The Cursed Collector. Amanda Grayson had always been captivated by the strange and macabre. Her quaint antique shop, Ethereal Collectibles, was a haven for all things odd: weathered Ouija boards, rusted Victorian keys, and taxidermied curiosities. However, her prized possessions were her dolls. Each one had a story, a history steeped in whispers of tragedy. And Amanda reveled in unearthing their secrets. When she came across an online listing for a 19th-century porcelain doll named Evelyn, she knew she had to have it. The doll, with its cracked alabaster face, unsettling glass eyes, and faded silk gown, was described as unusually lifelike. Its previous owner claimed it was cursed, accusations Amanda dismissed as superstitious nonsense. She saw it as a unique addition to her collection, an easy way to attract curious buyers. After an exchange of emails and a wire transfer, Evelyn arrived at Amanda's shop in an unassuming wooden crate. As she opened the package, an icy draft swept through the room, sending a shiver down her spine. Amanda brushed it off as her imagination and carefully placed Evelyn in the shop's display window, her hollow gaze staring into the street. That night, Amanda's world began to unravel. Amanda first noticed the changes a week after Evelyn's arrival. Customers avoided the doll, whispering about feeling watched when they neared it. One elderly woman even claimed Evelyn's eyes followed her across the room. Though unnerved, Amanda dismissed their reactions as suggestive paranoia. Her doubts began to waver when she heard the footsteps. The sound echoed through the shop late at night, soft, deliberate taps of porcelain on wood. Amanda, sitting in her office, froze as the noise approached. Gripping her desk lamp for protection, she crept into the showroom, her breath shallow. Evelyn remained in the display case, her delicate hands resting in her lap. But her head had turned. Evelyn was no longer facing the street but staring directly at Amanda. Desperate for answers, Amanda researched the doll's origins. Evelyn had belonged to a young girl named Abigail Whitmore, the only daughter of a wealthy industrialist. Abigail died under mysterious circumstances in 1893, and rumors suggested Evelyn had been involved. After Abigail's death, the doll changed hands several times, leaving a trail of accidents and inexplicable deaths in its wake. Amanda found an old journal entry from one of Evelyn's previous owners, a woman named Margaret Allen. In shaky handwriting, Margaret had written, "She watches. She waits. She punishes. Beware her silence, for it screams louder than words." The more Amanda read, the more she became convinced Evelyn was no ordinary doll. But rather than remove the doll, Amanda felt compelled to keep it, an unnatural attachment she couldn't shake. Evelyn seemed to call to her, whispering secrets only she could hear. The hauntings escalated. Amanda awoke one night to find Evelyn sitting at the foot of her bed, though she distinctly remembered locking the doll in the shop's safe. Evelyn's glass eyes gleamed in the moonlight, and Amanda swore the doll's lips twitched into a faint smile. Terrified, Amanda locked Evelyn in her basement. But it was futile. Evelyn always found her way back, perched on her dresser, staring at her from the corner of the room. Amanda began to hear Abigail's voice in her dreams, pleading for help, warning her to destroy Evelyn. Then came the mirror. One morning, Amanda caught her reflection moving independently. The image of herself smiled, its expression distorted and sinister. Behind it stood Evelyn, her cracked porcelain face twisting into something alive, her glass eyes burning with malice. Amanda screamed, shattering the mirror. But the doll's laughter echoed through the room. Amanda sought help from a local medium, Eleanor Blackwell, who agreed to perform a séance. Eleanor warned Amanda that Evelyn's spirit was vengeful, bound by a deep-rooted grudge. The séance began at midnight. Candles flickered as Eleanor chanted, her voice heavy with urgency. Evelyn sat in the center of the table, lifeless yet oppressive. Suddenly, the room turned icy. A gust of wind extinguished the candles, and the air filled with Abigail's cries. Eleanor screamed, clutching her chest as blood seeped from her eyes. Amanda watched in horror as Evelyn's porcelain body cracked, revealing skeletal hands that clawed their way free. "She is mine," Evelyn's voice boomed, a demonic blend of a child's whisper and a guttural growl. Abigail's ghost appeared, her face pale and tear-streaked. She begged Amanda to destroy the doll. Summoning her courage, Amanda grabbed a fireplace poker and smashed Evelyn's head. The doll let out a blood-curdling shriek as a dark, shadowy figure erupted from its remains, dissipating into the air. Abigail's ghost smiled faintly before vanishing, leaving Amanda trembling and alone. Though Evelyn was gone, Amanda was not free. The hauntings continued. now centered on her. Every mirror reflected Evelyn's glassy eyes. Every night brought the echo of porcelain footsteps. Amanda closed ethereal collectibles, retreating into solitude. Evelyn had been destroyed, but the curse had passed to her. In the silence of her home, Amanda often heard Abigail's voice. Softer now, almost pitying. She waits. Amanda. She waits for you to join her. And Amanda knew, one day, Evelyn would come for her. 2.